What's up, AfterBuzzers, and welcome to the Magician's After Show. Today we're talking about episode 8, Word as Bond, and we have a special guest. Stay tuned.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
We'll just enjoy this creepy music.
This might be one of my favorite intros that we've ever done.
This should have been for a creepier episode, though. Well, it had
It's kind of creepy.
It was, yeah, different kind of way.
I dig it. Can we get the, look at that.
Oh, we get
those
the
lights.
Yay.
There we go.
So what's up? Welcome to the Magician's After Show. Today we're talking about episode 8, Word as Bond. My name is Kari Lane. You can find me online at Kari D Lane. That's Karidlane. And I'm joined by a very special guest, the DP of the Magicians, otherwise known as Cinematographer, the guy behind the camera who makes everything look very pretty, Elie Smolkin. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then we'll go around the table for the rest of our awesome panel.
We sure will. My name is Ty Matthews. You can find me on all forms of social media at Ty Matthews PMA.
Hi, I'm Adrian Snow. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Miss Adrian Snow. It's MSADRIANSNOW.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Elie. Let people know where they can find you online so they can stalk you digitally.
Oh, good. Yeah, at Elie Smolkin. ELIESMOLKIN.
And a quick question I have right away is how on most TV shows, it's different director every episode.
Mm-hmm.
But you're DP on like all the episodes. How does that work out?
It's great, but it also means very limited prep. So how it works is I'll be shooting and prepping at the same time. And we have just an incredible crew that can help fill in the blanks. We have a rigging crew that's there kind of working out some logistics. And then we take a day where our second unit takes over. And I go with the director and a lot of the production team, and we go and look at all the locations, and we kind of plan what's going to happen in that episode. And then the next few days, we sort of execute, order all the equipment, plan out all the shots. In this coming episode, there is a soul bridge. So we had to figure out what that was. And, we get like 2-3 days to figure that out. So, it's tough, but it's fun. It's really fun.
How does, as in terms of this kind of, this season and a half that we've sort of gone through up till now, has there been any sort of situations that have given you especially that have been kind of especially challenging?
Yeah, I mean, this show is very challenging, and that's what makes it fun. There is a ton of worlds, and we established early on that we wanted each world to look different. So every time they add something new, we have to come up with a whole new look. And then, with the sci-fi fantasy element, there's always something that doesn't exist in the real world. So you read it on the page, like the Soul Bridge, you read it and you say, okay, well, what's a Soul Bridge? And you have to figure out what that means. And so we have an amazing creative team, and we sort of all get together, and we get scripts a couple episodes in advance. So we'll flag things that aren't normal, that we don't see every day. And Rachel O'Toole, the production designer, and I and the rest of the team will sort of talk about, okay, how do we design, what is it, and how do we design it? How does it work from a physical standpoint? What's the science behind it? And then we'll sort of pitch ideas to our showrunners. And when something sticks, we go into designing it. And so that, with that example, they had to craft those crystals, and we put LEDs and wired them in each one. We created like a lighting rig where the actors could interact with it, pull out little plugs from the windows, and you saw the sun move. So in each different scene, although you didn't get to see it in this episode, in each scene, the sun kind of hits the crystals at a different point. So it's stuff like that. It's just like a big collaboration. And luckily we have a incredible creative team and people who support us up top to just take chances.
Absolutely.
And then how is it working with a different director every time?
It's great because the thing with TV is each episode, the show has a look, the show has a formula, the cast knows exactly who their characters are and what they're going to do, but each director that comes in gets to put a little bit of their spin on it. And James Conway, who did this episode, has done several with us before. He's awesome. So when he comes in, it's sort of, he just fits right in because he's done it before and he knows exactly the style. And at the same time, he's so good at planning, what's needed and how each scene's going to flow together, that I think you can really feel it when you watch his episodes. And the same, each director brings like some of them like, a certain style more, some of them like just are better with talking to the cast, or they all have their own pros and cons, and we all fill in to make the show feel like one show, but at the same time, it's just really fun and exciting to have them come in and put their own flavor on it.
Nice.
Yeah.
You touched on it briefly, and when Joshua Butler was here as a guest, he mentioned it. How do you make the different worlds different? Because you talked about the look of them. So what is used to make Fillory look different from New York versus Breakbills and versus new ones that pop up?
Yeah, I'm glad Josh talked about it. He's another director that is great to work with, and that has done several with us. So each world is separated with lighting, with color, and with lenses.
Called it.
So yeah, we try to craft as much as we can. Sometimes we'll get a one-off world, but as much as we can, we will try to find lenses that help make this camera, digital. With film days, it's an organic thing, so there would be problems with it, and that's sort of what made it feel true to life and different. With digital, you always get the same frame.
Yeah.
So we find lenses that can kind of make it organic again and tell a different story. So Fillory, for example, has special glass that we've crafted with Panavision. And there's a process with the coating, and what it allows us to do is when things are out of focus, it kind of gives like a very different feel, like it falls off differently. There's aberrations that catch flares really easily. The skin tones are hopefully very glossy, and so the idea with that is we wanted something that felt a little bit magical, a little bit different, a little bit more fantastical. The flip side is Breakbills will have a very clean, newer lens that makes everything feel like the Juilliard of magic, like everything's idyllic there. So we have lights that are caramel in color. They sort of make it look like it's always magic hour. Like that's very much on purpose. So it's a combination. In New York, we try with lighting with fluorescence and using practicals and not having this magical moonlight that shows up at night. It's all supposed to be very grounded in reality, so that hopefully, as you see, we jump from world to world to world. You know exactly where we are and who's there, even though the characters jump from world to world.
Right, and that's something that we've definitely noticed from kind of a lot of the blues and the grays of New York to, like you said, the golden of Breakbills. But even to when Penny's kind of jumping around from fountain to fountain, it's very kind of muted and sort of you instantly know like, oh, this is somewhere we've never been before.
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that. Yeah, the idea with the Netherlands is that it's the world between worlds. So if New York's cold and greeny blue and Breakbills is caramel, we wanted to do something that's a little bit devoid of color, like it's the sort of in between all the worlds, so it doesn't have a lot of color until they choose wherever they go. And I think later on you'll see some other worlds that have a different color scheme, and I think you'll feel it even more, which is cool.
Ooh, more worlds.
Yeah, maybe.
Right.
Yay! So at the very beginning, we learned Julia lost her shade, which I'm pretty sure we all were like,
yeah.
That had to, right. That had to be,
Maybe they mentioned it enough the first 2 episodes. I was like, she's probably going to lose it eventually. So.
Well, I'm glad we were told right away, because that was something at the end of the episode. We were talking about predictions, and we were like, she's going to lose her shade. Even in the comments, it was great. So yeah, if you guys are watching this live, feel free to comment down below, and you can ask questions to our guests. And if it is later, leave comments, because I loved everybody before was talking about like what happened with Julia, and we were all like, it's her shade.
For sure, and I think we could see that coming. What I think I wasn't seeing coming was the effect that it would have on her disposition, how she was almost acting kind of like how the Beast was, when he was around.
So a psychopath.
Just so happy and so kind of jolly about everything now that she doesn't have a conscience.
Right. Well,
sounds really kind of nice.
Right.
Well, speaking of not having a conscience, a couple people in the chat said, who would win of shadeless Julia versus Nif and Alice?
Oh, interesting.
Nif and Alice.
See, all I could think about this whole episode was like how much of an ass kicker Margot would be without a shade. Like that would just be everyone's wrecked.
That would be scary.
Right?
Yes.
She's already declared war with the shade.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, you touched upon it really well, Ty, of how the thing is Katie reacted so much to Julia because she was like happy. I don't think we've seen her happy ever.
Since the beginning.
Even when she had magic, she always had this like heaviness to her, and she's like, "What's up, guys?" And like,
well, that's what the Beast said. He's like, if you get rid of it, then you will have this weight off of you. And I mean, not having a conscience, that's the ultimate weight-free
right?
way to live.
Yeah,
totally.
It's it's not good. It's as liberated as you could possibly be.
Yeah.
I don't know. It'd be a hard thing to give up. Well, we haven't seen quite the negative side for her. Like, she doesn't care.
For her, not yet.
No, for her. Like, she doesn't care yet.
I mean,
like, if you lost it, she doesn't
killing a
seem to
whole
mind.
civilization is pretty.
But
Right,
she
but
doesn't
to
care.
her, like, that didn't mean anything to her.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, like, will it ever bother her enough that, do you know it's going to be a thing of consequence to yourself? So, I don't know, who would give up their shade for ultimate power?
Right. And I love that shot, not to jump super far in the episode, but like as you were talking about, like, kind of that act of war, that super far away shot, and that's just that explosion in the distance.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that shot.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we got to work with some drones for that, actually.
Did you
Yes,
really?
okay.
Yeah, Jamie and I wanted to bring in some drone footage for when we did the forest stuff. So there's a couple shots in there, but that was one of them.
I did notice the other one where they, was that the
It's to
same one
open
when
the
they,
scene,
yep.
yeah, where we sweep across the field and kind of get us into it. And then, yeah, I mean, how else can you rise above, you know, the trees and see where that, you know, because we want it to happen in the distance and a whole forest to go away. So,
Right.
yeah, we have great drone operators up there, and that was, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And not only the cinematography, but also the sound, just that kind of that moment of silence where you hear it off in the distance.
Yeah.
Sì.
Yeah, I think,
And then the scream.
I think it's a good,
Right.
it's a good surprise.
It is. It absolutely
I
is.
think you're expecting that.
That I think I audibly gasped at that moment. I didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah. Actually, on that, what is it like for you then to have a camera operator set up your shot, or like how does that work? Do you set it up and say this is what I want, or
Yeah,
you know you're not really controlling it? Really?
No, you know, I mean, we work with several cameras, so we always have 2 cameras on set,
Okay.
and then sometimes we have 3. Occasionally, we have 4, and so what we do is we design, we sort of block out the scene, we let the cast kind of figure out with the director and sometimes with me, like, okay, this is how we want to play it, this is where we come from, this is where we stand, and then we figure out how to cover it. And so a lot of what I do is work with the camera operators to design the shots and to figure it out. So when it comes to the drone footage, we talked about where we wanted to start, when we wanted to take off, and then at the same time, you know, where is this forest going to be for the explosion, because the VFX team has to know where that explosion happens. So we tried to find a pocket where they can actually put that in. So it's, you know, it's a lot of reconnaissance where they're just flying up and kind of panning around and being like, all right, there's a house. There's no houses in, you know, modern houses in Fillory. So we had to kind of find the right spot, and then so that's the funny thing you don't think about. You're in the middle of the woods and you're like, oh cool, we can shoot anywhere, and then you rise up 100 feet and
like,
it's
oh.
civilization. You're like, oh. So
Right?
yeah, so it's a lot of sort of talking it through. Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Then Julia and Katie are like still on the mission to kill Renard, which is interesting. I mean, Julia doesn't care, but she still has her like, no, but I want to kill him.
Well, and that was what struck me too, is that, you know, she might not have that emotion left, but I think she's cold enough to still want revenge at the very least, even if she's not emotionally tied to it.
Yeah.
She's like, no, screw this guy. He's going down no matter what.
Oh yeah, I'm happy that she's still on that mission.
Right, of
Still
course.
on the path of vengeance.
Yes. But what do you guys think of the idea that they were like, let's just make our own spell and use Dana's son?
That was, it's interesting how kind of stuff like that keeps kind of coming back, and this idea of tracking things down using history and using that date specifically, you know, the fact that, oh, we found someone admitted to this hospital in August of, I think it was 1976. The fact that, you know, even in this world of magic and of spells and of sigils and of wards, the fact that they can still just look stuff up and find stuff like that.
I love that sequence, that reconnaissance sequence, when they go back to the
the
hospital and there's all the stills with the
Yes.
Viewmaster. Like,
Yes.
I think what's really cool about this show is they try to ground the magic in physics, and they talk about like bending light, and they talk about like being able to see through some apparatus, and you know, obviously it's magic, but I think the way that sequence was put together was really cool. Yeah.
Exactly.
I
I think you're right. Yeah, for sure.
I had a note here. So how'd you film that hospital bit?
Oh yeah.
With the viewfinder specifically.
Yeah, I actually just uploaded a behind-the-scenes photo of Jason doing it.
Nice.
So it's basically we shot it 2 ways. We shot it obviously the normal way where it was present day, to the coverage of the scene, and then we cranked up the shutters, which basically makes the image a lot more crisp. There's no motion blur, and we had the actors walk through what they see, and we did it 2 ways. We did it one way where they walk all the way through, and one way where they stop in each sort of section, and then in post they pull those stills and they sort of, you know, did that whole really cool VFX with the scratch out and everything, and it's kind of merged it all together. And then in color, after all of that, we had our, you know, present day New York vibe, and then we kind of warmed up just to make it feel a little more vintage and just make it feel like it feels a little more like the past. And so it was kind of a combination of all of that, which I think worked out great.
Yeah, absolutely. So that particular color change then was post instead of...
Well, so what we do for color is we have they're called lookup tables. So we'll design, it's a combination of gels and color temperature, and it's the camera and the lighting. And then we'll create these lookup tables for each world. And then later, once the edit's done, I go into a coloring suite and we fine tune everything. And we get to see the edit together and make everything match, but also make it a little more refined. And MTI Film does that, and they're wonderful. They're really great.
I have to say, I really appreciate the colorists that you guys work with, because it's something that I pick up on when I watch movies and television. And if it's bad, or if it looks like one note, then that's noticeable. And it's kind of like, oh, this isn't as fun to watch. So I really appreciate that.
And that was that was one thing that jumped out to me about the show just from frame one, is that I don't know anything about it, but aesthetically, it's gorgeous right off the bat.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Steve Porter at MTI, it's such a hard job for him because everything keeps changing, you know. And so he'll sometimes email me when he's doing his first pass, and he'll just say like, oh yeah, so like Julia's in it, so it's New York, right? I'm like, oh no, she's in Philly in this episode. He's like, oh crap. So it's so hard, but he's so good at it, and then we get to refine it together. It gets even better, and it's wonderful. Yeah.
Actually, random question. Yeah. Have you read the books?
I have read the books. Yeah. I've read them, and then I try to forget so that I can just like take each script as its own thing, because it's you know, it's the same show, it's the same thing, but it's like also totally different. I think it's getting explored in a lot of different ways, and I love that. So you kind of have to you know, let go and know that you're making something new, but it helps too when it's like just a reference to something, and then to know what the deeper side is
absolutely, because as you're reading something, you're always painting that picture in your head. You're kind of you're doing your own sort of cinematography as you go, like what would the scene look like, you know, in filler or in break bills, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think like a cinematographer then? Like I'm like, wait, do you think in that way when you're reading and think like this is how the shot would be?
Yeah, I mean, I generally read scripts a few times, and as I read it, sort of try to picture what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like. I mean, I think that our showrunners and the director have a lot to say about that too, but I do come in with, you know, my approach and how it feels. I think it's more about feeling, and a lot of times it's location dependent. You know, we'll read on the page, makes total sense, and we'll walk in the location and be like, oh, well, there are no windows. So, you know, and then you kind of have to shift it 100%, 100 degrees and 180 degrees, and then find something new. But that's what makes it fun. Yeah.
Were there any situations like that where you kind of had to really go in the opposite extreme of what you had planned?
Yes, but not in this episode. In later episodes for sure, and also in season 1 with the Welters tournament. There's some surprises in there where we read it. I read it as gym. It's probably my fault, but I read it as gymnasium. So I thought of the gyms that I grew up in high school, which had no windows. And then we walked into this stunning gymnasium, but it has like 100-foot wide window that we had to create a black hole with. And I was like, oh, wow, that seems difficult.
Right.
But I mean, you know, we figured it out, and that goes to the crew's ability to make changes quickly, and you know, the production support. But we had to bring in like construction crane and like, you know, 100-foot solids and all sorts of stuff, which was really fun and really cool. And I think it's a great effect, but it's also surprising when you walk in, you're like, oh, that's actually a big window.
This is not what I was expecting. Okay.
At the Magicians Comic-Con panel, there were cosplayers of the Welter tournament outfits.
That's awesome. Yeah, those are good costumes. I love those.
So then, speaking of camera and our next bit, we have Quinton and Alice, and the word is Bond, and which I'm like, I don't feel this is safe. So that bit, a lot of shots are very up close and personal. What was that filming like?
Yeah. So actually, going back to your earlier question, so that idea was we first see that in episode 7, and so that's established by that director and how we're going to cover it. And luckily, that was Chris Fisher, who is our producing director and is there every episode. And so we talked a lot about, okay, how are we going to show that Alice is in Quinton's head? How are we going to show that he's the one that can see her? And be able to pop out into frames where she's not there. How are we going to show that? So Chris came up with this idea of just being right up in her face. So we end up shooting that with like 24 mil, 32 mil, like very wide lenses, and then have our camera operators stand maybe this far, like 4 or 5 inches away from her.
Oh, wow.
And Alice likes to move as a Niffin, so she's walking back and forth and kind of unpredictable. I mean, she's really good with camera, so she becomes, she explains what she's going to do, but if the camera operator stops early or she goes too far, she's just gonna smack. But it didn't happen. She was really good at it. But yeah, it's challenging. And then we wanted to balance that, make it feel like it was different, and then balance that with our standard, whatever world we were into, and pop out to this wide where she's not there. So we would shoot the scene twice, once with Alice, once without. And we would shoot it with wide angles when she was there and up and close, and then we would do our traditional lenses when she wasn't.
I really loved, because I don't know, I like trick camera stuff, but with whenever she would transition into, or Quinton would transition into Alice, which is those moments of like, he would fall out of frame and she'd pop up, or he'd be walking down the street, and then we'd cut and you'd see her. Yeah. Like, was that, I assume that's pretty just simple camera trickery, but was it?
Super simple tricks, and that's Jamie and I talking about, like, how do you show that they're the same, that she takes over his body, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of hard because we didn't want it to be a VFX thing, so it was a couple different tricks. The transition when she's walking in the sandbox, that one I think worked out great, and that's just an in-camera wipe. So we start on one side of the little girl with Quinton, and then as we're dollying to the right, we pass in front of the little girl so that the camera goes black for a second, and on that we cut. We do it again, and this time it's Alice, and so it feels like they just transformed. And so it's an old school trick, but I think it works great.
I love that stuff.
Great. Falling out of frame, we do that. We try to always, like, if Quinton fell down, we would see his POV, and then we try to pick it up, like in the cab. We had to somehow fit a 4-foot slider and 2 actors and a camera operator in the backseat of a cab, but we sort of started up in the ceiling and pulled back to a 2-shot, and I think that was like just a nice transition that tells the story, which is what we're doing.
So is that car just on a soundstage with lights behind it and water?
No, that would have been very comfortable. No, we were out in the cold. Out, and you sort of have to shoot when it's such a short scene. You shoot that with other scenes. So we were shooting that's the hospital scene, and the scene where they're doing the research in that, like, crystal supply closet. So we had to pop outside where the car was, have it all lit, and jump out there to shoot that scene. So we were outside cold.
Right, definitely.
Then we jump to another location outside. Oh wait, never mind. We're back to now we get Fillory, and they have the Golem moved it, and now definitely Fen has to know that there's like another one.
Right.
Yeah, I guess then she probably had to have always known.
I think she. Yeah. We're debating. Did Fen know that there's a Golem of Elliot and that he would leave?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think it was addressed, and I wouldn't dare explain that. But I'm not sure.
Enough.
I'm not sure. She definitely knows now, though. There's no way not to.
Yeah.
Right.
There's 2 of them right there, and that was an incredible double. The one is Hale, obviously, and then the other one is special effects made like a prosthetic double that looks.
Really?
It's actually also I just tweeted a photo of it. It's kind of creepy. Yeah.
Right.
It's really like
wow.
him.
They
did an amazing job.
It's like that episode of Black Mirror. Do you watch Black Mirror?
Yeah, I watched
You guys watch Black Mirror?
Not yet.
The episode. There's an amazing episode of Donald Gleason that reminds me a lot of this.
Oh God!
Creepy
that
Golem.
episode.
Yes,
Sorry.
that one. You guys
Yeah,
know.
that one. That was the creepiest episode of Black Mirror I've ever seen in
Super
my life.
unsettling.
Well, they have the magic brownouts, which that was kind of funny. For those of us in California, we have those a lot.
Right, exactly.
I don't know if other states have that, like, no brownouts, but I feel here in Southern California, absolutely we do.
What? Do we have those? What's that?
With the
Wait,
power
brownouts?
conditioning, yeah.
Yeah.
where it's like
okay. Well,
not quite
those of us
blackout.
living in Southern California or lived here your whole life, there during summer primarily, there would be brownouts where it'd be kind of a blackout, kind of not, and it'd be during the summer because there's AC and power and people using too much power.
Right. And it's like they say, it could be twice a day or twice an hour. Yeah.
I live in a very old building, so I don't think I would have even noticed. Like I notice it when it's raining because randomly.
Okay.
But
Right.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
I guess
that's what
what's
a brownout,
happening.
because it's not like
rolling
completely
brownouts,
dark.
right.
Yeah, rolling brownout, exactly.
Well, that's a fun effect too, where special effects had to figure out a way to turn fire off and then back on in a shot, which was
Sure.
I mean, they always amaze me with that. But yeah, they figured out a way to do it. It's very cool.
And then Elliot is okay-ish, but they have to keep starting over. Then we have Katie, Quinton, and Julia. Yeah, they're going after Kid Renard. Oh, but they run into Renard right outside.
Yeah.
Right.
The moment she leaves. Moment she leaves.
Exactly. But Quinton's still there and is like, fill your button. I was like, oh, good. They got out there real quick. But he notices the shade's gone. I thought he would notice. He didn't say any commentary on the kid being her not being pregnant anymore. Because he says my child, but he's not like, oh, it's gone.
Right.
I thought he kind of did say something because he started to threaten her, and I don't think he would have necessarily threatened her if she had still been pregnant.
I thought he just said like you're something. Oh, you had a shade amputation or something like that.
Right, about
because he goes in to threaten her about
she's
the
like,
baby,
whatever.
and then he like sniffs her or something.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
I just thought it'd be more like he would have said more of like,
right. It seems
rid of my child.
It seems more like just an inconvenience at this point. Like,
or he seemed to care more about it, and so it was a little weird of like.
I think at this point he's just worried about what he's gonna do to Julia more than really anything else. Sure. Like that part I think would have been cool for him.
Yeah.
But he's like, all right, now you're just giving me more reasons.
Or actually, maybe he didn't know she was pregnant.
I thought
what he was referencing was his
he meant
child
the other
from
child, as in he didn't
Dana.
know. Ooh, okay.
Because I don't think he knew she was pregnant. He just knew about his child with Dana.
That makes more sense. Then it doesn't matter that he didn't say anything to her. Well, because he probably left and didn't know. And did he know? You're like six out of my questions. Fair enough. No problem.
We'll see.
Julia's gonna stay with Margot, and they go there, and we get the information on the troops, the Dryad trees. Oh, and then that was the moving shot. It was very cool. But Julia and Margot, first the Dryad's a man, and then when he goes, they sent 2 females. That was my audible like.
We've already have kind of gotten confirmation that Fillory is a little backwards in terms of gender politics.
Right.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really cool that they're addressing that though, and that you've got clearly very strong women, and they're trying to change that, and I think they're very forceful and also very shocked that anybody would say that.
Yes.
Like that didn't cross their mind. Like I think they kind of set it up as, you're not supposed to go talk to the Dryad, and then they do, and then that's when it hits them like, you're 2 women, but they weren't expecting it, nor should they. But
and they were expecting the Dryad to be only women. They weren't expecting
exactly.
any men.
Yeah.
And so
Go ahead.
I do like that Margot has kind of taken over as the most powerful royalty in Fillory, because I think often because they make such a big deal about it being the king and the High King of Fillory and all this kind of stuff. So it's nice to see that Margot, this is like where Margot kind of belongs in a sense. Like this is where she gets to like spread her wings and really be a dragon.
And I think I felt like a lot of that was kind of at least partially so indicated by this bond that she has with Elliot, the fact that even if she doesn't want to, in his stead, she's more than willing to step up and kind of pick up the slack.
That's that line. She's like, "I'm faking it, Ellen. I need you back," and she's gonna cry.
Oh, that whole moment, that whole scene was incredible.
So good.
Yeah.
But did you guys feel she gave up kind of fast with the Dryad? I felt she's like, okay, fine, and then left. But Julia kind of stayed for a minute. That I'm like, is she gonna do more? Which she did later because she had the bomb. But
I mean, I didn't feel like I
Well,
don't know.
Margot's a
I feel
little-
like Margot's also kind of like, I think I've done it.
Yeah, I think she's learning how to be a little bit more diplomatic.
Yeah.
And not really going as ham as she might have
Yeah.
when she first declared war on Loria. Which also to another point in terms of Loria, I love that their use of illusions as magic, from disappearing the castle to making their ranks look more than they are.
Yeah.
I love things like that.
It's all about deception.
Exactly. This running through line in their battle plans.
Yeah. We mentioned a little bit of the Alice switch, and it's interesting that, Quinton doesn't see any of it, doesn't remember it. Definitely a weird sensation of where have you been?
Yeah.
Right.
But learns that she was looking up the holy men who were trying to essentially reverse the spell or the Niffenness. But she denies it. But then I'm like, wait, does she really honestly want it? And that's what Quinton's hoping for? Or, we're not 100% sure what her true motives are.
Right.
For
And it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell what her motives might be at this point. Because I think we're seeing more and more of old Alice kind of slip in,
Yes.
which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting what you had mentioned about kind of the difference between normal Alice and Niffen Alice is this sort of dynamic motion where the old Alice was very kind of quiet and sort of didn't really move around a lot, and this one's a lot of pacing back and forth, a lot of like that frustrated groan or like scream that she does. I love that. But it's little things like that.
Yeah. I think it's cool to see all these iterations of Alice, to see that build. And I think it's cool that we don't know her motivations. Like, that's one of the biggest, mysteries so far, and I like that they're playing that. And I think that everybody's kind of reading into, including the audience, is reading into what she's trying to do and what she's trying to accomplish. And especially in this episode, I think Quinton is, maybe there's some hope, and that's what he's obviously thinking. And that's really... I think that's a special thing this episode.
Someone in the chat, Helena, asked, do you think she's still trying to save her brother?
No.
Oh man, I wish. I don't think so.
I think she's trying to save herself, not her brother.
Right.
Sadly.
Right. Yeah.
I think she's gotten
power
past it.
corrupts, absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah.
Always.
I think
always.
if she's become a Niffen and she, judging by what she decides to do in Dublin, she enjoys being a Niffen, or at least the Niffen enjoys existing. So I don't know if that's even a part of her prerogative anymore, any more than Julia cares about anything than what benefits her.
Right. And I do love speaking about this new version of Julia, this new version of Alice. I feel like one of the through lines that we've seen even since season 1 is we've seen two versions of a lot of these characters, from the Golem to this version of Alice to this shadeless version of Julia. We've seen kind of different versions of a lot of these characters.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of the show is about making choices, like who we become when we make choices. And I think it's cool to also at the same time get to explore different versions of the same person, and they've made different choices, and now we get to see what happens when they do. Right. And I don't know, I think that's what's special about this show is it's there's all these flawed characters who are just making decisions, and then they have consequences, and then they have to deal with those. And that's nobody's perfect in real life, and nobody's perfect on this show, which I love. Yeah.
Speaking of someone who's not perfect and keeps trying to struggle, we got Penny.
Right.
Who, I like the librarian called Mayakovsky the Lion Drunkard. I was like, there's some history there that we don't know about.
Right. Right. I feel like, the Mayakovsky has, like, his reputation has almost become apocryphal. Like, it's just these whispered myths that, like, oh, this old drunk guy that got banished to this,
Antarctica.
Right, exactly. For sleeping with the wrong student.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
Do you guys, so he makes a deal with the librarians. They kind of go, we can help. Do you think it's a good deal?
I don't think anytime you agree to sell your soul to anyone, it's a good idea.
I feel there's no way. There's no way to like.
They can essentially have him even after death.
Yep.
But he still has to go and work at the library. So it's like, so that's your soul gone.
Up to and after death for 1 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
Steep deal.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel I've like I said, I've been not necessarily enjoying Penny's story this season, only because I just feel like he's so underused because he doesn't have his magic. And
yeah, but now he does.
But I also said it was a nice turn to see a man kind of take the position of what a woman normally is. So a woman's usually there to be like, I will support you through whatever you're going through. So it's nice to see him have to take on that role for Katie.
Yeah.
I just don't. I wish it was someone else other than Penny.
Right. But I think you're right. Yeah, Katie has taken such an active role in the season so far, and he's kind of he's powerless both literally and figuratively to kind of help.
Well, they have their moment of like, yeah, we need to talk. Okay, we'll keep things professional. Which is like,
Right.
Penny, of course, notices Quinton's off, which I was waiting for that. I'm like, somebody's gonna notice.
Oh, of course.
But then they figure out Alice, and that's how they're gonna see the time stuff. And then I was like, yeah, Quinton needs to tell somebody. But Alice is like, hey, it's a bad idea. They're just gonna think you're kind of crazy. And that was the one moment where she was kind of nice to him when he's like, I just want to help somebody. Like that real nice speech.
Well, and like, that turned real quick.
Oh, yeah.
That was...
Well, she let her guard down.
That was her troll. But I felt like that was her trolling him. I felt like that was Nif and Alice trolling Quinton.
Yeah.
Just
I
like...
felt she was genuine, like...
Oh, no way. No, at first I thought, but when that turn happened, I thought... I thought that was all a big...
There's no genuine part of Alice anymore. I think we keep looking for it, but I think that's gone. Like the same person who would go and slaughter a monster that looks like a child without really flinching. Like that's not Alice anymore. You know.
And and I love that Penny is constantly vexed by whatever is in Quentin's head.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite scenes, I don't know about you guys, was the musical, the Taylor Swift musical in season 1. And I think ever since then it's just been like Penny is not annoyed by anything as much as he's annoyed by whatever's going on in Quentin's head.
Was there someone who was a big Taylor Swift fan first season? Because like every single
finding it coming up.
We would find some weird Taylor Swift reference, and we were like, "What is happening?" And then it just fell off.
I don't know the answer to that, but I don't know. I love that sequence though.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
So good.
And I think it's kind of, I don't know. There's something fitting about that.
Exactly.
Like being in a mental hospital and that's the song he chooses. And I don't know. It's just so great. But I also think that's what sells Penny not caring that that something's going on with Quinton at that point, because we've seen like a season and a half of him just thinking of like ridiculous things that Penny can't deal with. So, I like that setup. It's like it's a slow burn and then there's a payoff.
Exactly. And Adrian had mentioned that kind of monster scene. Can you talk about what went into shooting that and kind of tackling that?
Oh, it was really cool.
Yes.
So we needed. There's one shot in there where we sort of rise up, like an over the shoulder though, like the little girl's in it and we're rising up above Alice, and it's just really cool. It's like the special effects team brought what's called a parallelogram, which is like a big. Like a seesaw almost, but a really big metal one. And then they harness in a stunt double, and we strapped our camera to it, and it rose, I think, to 20 feet. Oh, wow. So we could start with a remote head. We were starting in a normal shot like we were doing on Alice, over the shoulder, and then when she rises up, we kind of tilt down and we follow the shot. And I think that with the little bit of tentacle that they put in the bottom frame, like just kind of really sold that monster coming up. It was so cool. And then the electric team and I and the art department with Rachel again, we kind of built in, this is what we like to do for New York, we built in the lighting. So you saw those like street lamps that are kind of, so we try to build that in so that we have the freedom to shoot a lot of directions, to move quickly, to sort of be able to go that wide, you know, because normally you would see one of our lights if you're going to go that wide and give room for this 20-foot tall monster. So we build in the lights and you do see the lights, but it sort of feels okay. And then the visual effects team just puts in that awesome tentacle where the parallelogram was. So like normally that's where the arm is, and instead they just kind of put this cool VFX in front of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
really cool.
we didn't really get to see a lot of that monster, and I think that even going back to old monster movies, it's such an effective trope.
I love that. I think that was so smart of them to do. It's just the less you see of it, the more I believe in it, and the more my imagination fills it in. And we, you know, the same reason why we try to keep it dark in that scene is like they only have to do so much to make it feel like, oh, this is a really gross big tentacle coming.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd rather not be scarred for life. I was just,
Right.
I was just talking about The Fly with a friend of mine, and I was explaining it because she had never seen it. I was like, scarred for life. Like, I can't even,
Oh,
if I think about
absolutely.
it in my head, I immediately have to think about something else, or else I will.
The Jeff Goldblum Fly, right?
The Jeff Goldblum and Fly 2, which is scarier, in my
Wow.
opinion.
Uh,
But, sorry, side note.
One thing that will be interesting for Julia for later is getting the invisibility stone thing from the Lorians. And I liked her yelling Dryad boy and then with the explosion.
Right.
So casual.
But
Just
Julia,
casual.
Julia's
murder.
taken to the dungeon, because that's where you go.
Right.
To murder people.
Yes.
And I like her rationalization of like, look, this was all
Yes.
my fault. You can throw me under the bus. Like, I did
Yeah.
you a favor.
Katie and Penny, he gets to see her in a moment of vulnerability of like, I'm drunk and a junkie and stuff. And I don't want you to be my hero. But later, it gets his reveal of I love you. He said the L word, guys.
Right.
He already said that, though.
Well,
Did
this
he?
moment.
He said it before they turned into swans and went down to Breakville.
Oh, that was his reveal.
Breakville South,
Yes.
sorry. But yeah, so he
He
said it, and
still
then she
loves
was
it.
like,
Migration.
Yes.
she's like, I don't love you.
Yeah.
And she took off.
Right.
It's the second time he said I love you, and she didn't say it back.
Yeah.
That would be a deal breaker.
That is a bit rough. With Katie telling him, go incept him in terms of going into Quinton's head. That was great. Analysis there.
Well, and that knockout moment of Katie just like out of nowhere.
Yeah. Glass jaw.
Right, exactly. Which like everyone, of course, Quinton would have a glass jaw.
Yeah. No problem.
That was one of our speaking of recurring themes in season 1. I feel
Yes.
at one point every single episode Quinton was getting knocked to
Yes.
the ground
Yes.
at some point in some
Somebody
way.
was hitting him. Somebody was throwing him into the air.
Right.
We called it first 5 episodes.
It might have been. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Poor Jason.
And then we have Elliot. The body transfer goes okay, which you talked a little bit briefly, but was that scene difficult to light because it looked gorgeous?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was difficult just because it was dealing with something that doesn't exist, and so just conceptually it was
Right.
difficult. But I think it turned out really cool, and that was just a lot of the just collaboration between all departments. Just kind of came together at the last second. We had almost no time to do it, but we pulled it off somehow. Just kind of how it goes.
And I guess the other last major thing is we have the Niffin monk, and that was interesting.
Oh man.
Can we talk
So
about
good.
just? I love the technical effects. I know we don't have a lot of time, but in terms of getting everything like the axe that drops down and makes the sound go, and you
Oh,
see
the
that
lighting,
she
that
set,
neon green.
Yes.
She set everything up so that when Quinton walks in, he sets everything up to get the Niffin to come out. I thought
Yeah,
that was just great.
Our reference was Baz Luhrmann, Romeo and Juliet. That's why the neon cross, and that was Rachel's idea, and it was so cool. And so
Interesting.
we tried to expand on it with the neon green and all that.
See, anytime I see a neon cross, I think 7.
That's another good. I always reference that one. And then the special effects team's just so good. Like, and I'd say like 9 out of 10 times they like the hammer hit the button, like everything just kind of
wow.
flowed in. The bird coordination was excellent. I
Yeah.
don't know how they did that, but no, it was really fun. I love that stuff.
Just straight up Home Alone style.
Yeah,
That's the first thing I thought.
yeah,
I
Ruth
love that.
Goldberg. Yeah,
That's my framer reference.
Exactly. The Wet Bandits.
Anything else about this episode you'd like to share or?
No, it was a blast. I mean, we have so much fun on this show. The whole cast. I mean, you guys have met a lot of them. They're so fun, and the crew, it gets so involved. I've never worked on a show where like the transpo team driving in is talking to you about the script that that you're shooting, like, or the caterer is like, hey, I love this episode, like everybody loves the show, and that everybody feeds off that energy, and it's just such a joy to be a part of a show like that. It really is. And this episode was no different. It's just great.
Actually, a random thing that's very true. Helena goes more animal murder tonight. Yes, we've had quite a few animals die on this show.
Animals just
Yeah.
really getting it in the show.
Yeah.
We got the
So
bunny,
many.
cancer puppy, and
Cat.
birds,
Oh,
and the
cancer-
cat.
And the cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they do
So
kill
every
us.
What's up with the
version of
animals,
Pet.
man?
Forgot about Cancer Puppy.
I don't know.
It feels
I
like
didn't choose it.
Death is only permanent for animals.
Oh, cute
Yeah.
little ones too.
I know.
All All right. Well, we're out of time. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for watching.
you.
Please make sure to give the video a thumbs up, 5 stars on iTunes. Comment below on what you thought of the episode and your predictions. One prediction, if you have it. Anybody?
That monk's bad news.
I think that Julie and Renard are gonna have a face-off. I don't know.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
That's all I got.
AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Oh, I was gonna say we're skipping those.
We got the
but
quick one. This monk is gonna be really, really, really bad
Okay.
news. And I think
Yeah.
once Alice finds out those secrets that she wants so badly to learn from him, it's gonna go down.
Yeah, I want to know what happens once once Alice gets out of Quinton. Like,
Right.
what can possibly happen with
Yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah.
And I wonder if Julia's not necessarily get her shade back, but understand what she's doing, what
Ooh.
kind of consequences.
Shadeless Julia, Niff and Alice face off.
Yes,
Oh,
you
that'd be
guys
nice.
called it earlier in the chat. It would be fun to see, or at least they have some sort of like chat
Oh,
or
sure.
something.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining
Yeah,
us, Ellie.
thank
It's been
you.
real
Yeah,
fun
thank
to
you for
hear
having
the
me.
Definitely. Yeah, it's
behind
been
the
wonderful.
scenes.
Thanks.
So we'll start with you, Adrian. Come back this way.
Yes.
Where can people find you
You
online?
can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Miss Adrian Snow. You can also hear me do weird voices every Friday on Popcorn Talk for the Unproduced Table Read.
There you go. You can find me on all forms of social media at Ty Matthews PMA, as well as on Monday nights on the Monday Night Raw After Show.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Elie Smolkin.
And you guys can find me online at Kari Lane. That's KARIDLANE, and a lot of shows, so I won't list them. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you all next week. See ya!
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.